Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. What did Darth Sidious ultimately want? Why did he work so hard to build the Empire? It wasn't just about destroying the Jedi Order, no, they were just a roadblock to Palpatine's ultimate desire, which is really all about power. And with that power, Palpatine wanted not only complete control of the entire galaxy, he wanted control over life and death itself. And a key part of this desire to cheat death, as we're finding out, is creating a suitable body for Darth Sidious to inhabit should he ever get killed. You see, powerful Force users, whether they're dark side or light side oriented, can maintain some type of consciousness and sense of self even after they die. In a spirit form, a Sith Lord can potentially possess another body. In Legends, it was easier to possess cloned bodies as they had no consciousness that the Sith spirit needed to suppress. And so both in Legends and now in canon, it's revealed that Palpatine has this massive research project dedicated to creating the perfect cloned vessel for him to inhabit in the future. Dubbed Project Necromancer, the idea was not only to create a clone, but also create a clone that has a high midichlorian count, or M count, as it's being called in the recent Bad Batch series. Despite the many advances in cloning humans pioneered by the Kaminoans in the years leading up to the Clone Wars, creating a clone with a high midichlorian count was still pretty much impossible. And the last thing Darth Sidious wanted to do was to possess a body that didn't have any Force abilities at all. He would feel trapped in that body, if anything. And that was just the beginning of his problems, really. In Legends, when Sidious would inhabit a new clone body, he would actually start degrading from his use of dark side Force abilities. Before we continue, a quick word from our sponsor for today's video, BetterHelp. A new American Psychiatric Association study revealed that 1 in 3 Americans feel lonely every week. And it's not surprising given the fact that most of our social interaction now occurs online, usually in very low quality formats, and many of us are now even working from home. We are social creatures, and there's really nothing that can substitute meaningful interactions and conversations with our fellow human beings. This is where BetterHelp comes in. It connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to not only help you with whatever issues you're dealing with, but also to simply listen and give you feedback and advice. Sometimes that's all we really need to break through a rough patch in our week or year. All BetterHelp therapists can be reached through your phone or computer via phone call, video chat, or messaging, whichever format you feel is the most comfortable. Just follow this link on screen, answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you usually within 48 hours with a therapist. If you guys are looking for more information on BetterHelp, check out the link in the description below. Anyway, it seems like in all the new Star Wars content in the background, there's always a hint about this cloning research program. We saw it in The Mandalorian with the appearance of Dr. Pershing, who is attempting to do research on Baby Gogurt. And of course, in The Bad Batch, we have Dr. Hemlock and his facility on Mount Tantiss, where he has Kaminoan scientist Nala Se working on that same project. In The Bad Batch, it's revealed that the young, unaltered clone named Omega is the key to solving the problem with the N counts. The importance of Omega and Baby Gogurt is very clear here. I would argue to Palpatine that these two are more important than even a fleet of Star Destroyers or even the Death Star itself because of their blood's ability to prolong his life indefinitely. But here's the thing, when the old Palpatine decides to go after the thing that he desires the most, he doesn't end up using this massive military he built. He doesn't even end up using his intelligence services directly. Instead, the minions he tasks with achieving these high-value targets mostly employ bounty hunters to get these tasks done.
Word is, certain Class 1 bounty hunters have been retrieving M-count targets for the Empire.
Such a large bounty for such a small package.
And the Empire doesn't just use bounty hunters for this specific project, they use bounty hunters for a lot of different things.
There will be a substantial reward for the one who finds the Millennium Falcon. You are free to use any methods necessary, but I want them alive. No disintegrations.
If this happened in any modern country in our own world with a modern military and modern law and justice system, this would be very, very unusual. Imagine if instead of sending Otter Team 6 to take out Bin Laden in Pakistan, the US put out an open contract for Bin Laden and hired a bunch of private citizens who also happen to be bounty hunters to take him out. Well, that's actually the plot of this Nicolas Cage movie called Army of One, which is based on the real life story of Gary Faulkner. Gary over here self-funded 7 separate attempts to find and kill Bin Laden before being found and arrested in the border regions of Pakistan, slightly confused, dehydrated, and equipped with a 40-inch katana, night vision goggles, a Bible, and of course, a Chinese-made .30 caliber pistol with added safety. This is the only safety Gary needs. And on top of that, Gary actually on one attempt tried to sail a ship from San Diego directly to Pakistan, but was blown off course by a hurricane and ended up in Mexico. And he also apparently believed that if he successfully killed bin Laden, he would be made a king of a Central American country. The point is, Gary's a goddamn national hero. He's cut from the same cloth as the men who actually brought down bin Laden, minus a pair of stealth Blackhawks, satellite surveillance, and oh yeah, the backing of the most dominant military force in human history. But here's the thing, as much as I believe that every community in America should have a Gary to keep the fucking Steves in check, the federal government just has more assets, more experience, and more ability to accomplish these highly sensitive and difficult missions. Which is why any nation or government, including the Empire, that uses bounty hunters to solve really important and complex problems probably is in trouble and has a very dilapidated security apparatus themselves. I mean, first and foremost, in the United States, we do have bounty hunters, but they're not going to go around disintegrating people. You see, bounty hunters in most states, including this walking pile of rare steak meat framed by Barbie hair, have the same legal authority that any citizen does. They aren't considered law enforcement in any way. The only bounties that they can collect are the result of civil agreements gone wrong between bail bond holders and prisoners. And so actually most of the bounty hunters we have here in the US, they're just bail bondsmen, which is not anywhere near as sexy as the term bounty hunter. Now, in the Old West, bounty hunters used to function a lot like they do in the Star Wars universe, especially because of the lack of law enforcement that existed at the time. I mean, in 1873, the Supreme Court actually officially recognized bounty hunting as a legitimate part of the legal system in the case Taylor versus Tainter. But as larger law enforcement bureaus started popping up in larger cities, and eventually the federal police system was created in the United States, having untrained civilians be an essential part of the law enforcement ecosystem is not a really good idea. And so what is up with the Empire? What's with all this hype about creating peace and stability all across the galaxy? You'd think that when Emperor Palpatine wanted something done properly, he would just rely on his many special forces units, from the Imperial Clone Commandos to the Inquisitors to the Death Troopers. I mean, why rely on bounty hunters if your entire goal as the Emperor is to have a complete monopoly over violence and who gets to detain other living beings? The existence of bounty hunters, third-party kind of law enforcement officials, runs directly counter to this idea of an empire and being in control of everything. Well, it's the same reason why after the Aldhani heist, the Empire passed the Imperial Emergency Act. It was out of necessity. You see, the Imperial Army at the time was supposed to act as a shield for the Empire. They were supposed to guard the many bases, shipyards, vehicle depots the Empire had strewn across the galaxy. When it became clear that the Imperial Army had some serious loyalty and morale issues amongst the rank and file, Palpatine decided that instead of fixing this branch of the military, well, he would just bring in another government organization to do its job instead. It's a shortcut, and it's not a great way of doing things. The Imperial Emergency Act would essentially give ultimate authority to the ISB, or the Imperial Security Bureau. Now, this was not a military intelligence unit. This also was not your typical government agency either. You see, the ISB was actually part of Compnor, which is the political movement that was kind of behind Palpatine's rise to power. It's responsible for the political messaging, propaganda, and consolidation of Palpatine's political base. The ISB started out as simply a political intelligence agency that focused on creating strategies to ensure loyalty amongst the civilian populace. It was also charged eventually with matters of internal state security, but post-Aldhani, everything would change for what was really just a very small and unknown agency at the time. See, Palpatine, through the Imperial Emergency Act, was giving ISB supervisors the ability to essentially step into any system and commandeer any vehicle, infantry formation, or even fleet and use it to fulfill their task. A task which usually was given directly to them by Emperor Palpatine. We've talked about this in a lot of our previous videos. Palpatine had to destroy a lot of things when he created the Empire. He had to destroy a lot of the institutions that made the Republic function as a government. He destroyed or limited the powers of institutions that were designed to keep him in check, like the Imperial Senate. He also made a purge within the Imperial military that perhaps less people have heard of. And no, I'm not talking about the decommissioning of the clones. They're actually Republic loyalists, especially in the Imperial fleet, who saw exactly what Palpatine was doing and tried to stop him. They, of course, would be purged. Individuals like Commandant Belo, who ran the Defiance, a training vessel for future Imperial cadets. When Palpatine Invader came to inspect his school, Belo would try to fly the ship into a nearby star with the purpose of killing everyone on board. The reality was Palpatine had to watch out for Republic holdovers like Commandant Belo everywhere he stepped within his government. This was really something that he couldn't tolerate because, like most dictators, Palpatine is driven by an overwhelming and, to a point, irrational fear of losing control. And so instead of making a functional military that could protect his empire and his throne, he created a new imperial military with a heavy focus of enforcing loyalty from its members and rooting out potential traitors. And take a look at the Stormtrooper Corps' design. They have a cumbersome armor system not for protection, but to conceal the identity of an individual. Then you have a numbering system for all of the soldiers, and that's not designed to make logistics more efficient or roll call more efficient. It's just another way to eliminate a soldier's individuality. On top of that, the Empire also seemed to discourage any kind of idle chatter amongst troops while on patrol, which is actually enforced by the ISB, who have access to mics in a stormtrooper's helmet. You know, a while back when I used to work as a news cameraman, I covered a fast food workers strike or attempt to unionize, I forgot what it was. They had arrested Ronald McDonald for dipping his french fries into the communal sauce. Now, one of the interesting things that one of the workers told me was that the managers at these fast food restaurants was purposely shifting employees' schedules around so that they wouldn't always work with the same people. This was in order to prevent these fast food workers from working together all the time, developing bonds, and eventually, I don't know, joining a union. Communication equals organization, and that is power, right? The Empire understood the importance of communication. They knew there were always going to be a few rebellious troopers here and there. The idea was to not let them infect other people with their terrible ideas, or worse, find like-minded people so that they could get together and, I don't know, write like a memo and then spread it all throughout the office. Communication can be dangerous, creating connections and friendships with people you work with that might override your loyalty to the Empire. That's also really dangerous. Remember, authoritarians have always been outnumbered by the people they oppress, which is why it's really important for authoritarians to always make their subjects feel alone, worried, and helpless, when the truth is they aren't alone, they aren't helpless. They actually have the upper hand. Anyway, needless to say, having your soldiers worried that they are being constantly monitored will affect their morale and combat awareness, probably. Not allowing your soldiers to develop meaningful connections or bonds with one another might also hurt morale and unit cohesion. Now, that might not be a big deal if you're just patrolling an area or garrison on a base or quartered on a ship, but if you need your stormtroopers to perform a more complicated mission, you know, pull security when special forces are trying to extract a high-value target, they might not be up for the job because they're just so poorly designed as an institution. And so you bring in your ISB supervisors, who are essentially like an extension of Emperor Palpatine's will. Remember, Palpatine runs his empire like a mob boss. He actually doesn't have institutions running his things. The most powerful individuals in the Empire are a hand-selected bunch of individuals that Palpatine uses to run the Empire on a daily basis. These are his capos. They aren't experts or technocrats who have been trained for their specific jobs. Many of them are not even qualified for their position. But that doesn't really matter because they're loyal to him. And so when Palpatine has a real problem, he's faced with a military that he's made ineffective because of his paranoia. He has an ISB organization who is extremely loyal to him and has surveillance gathering capabilities, but very little direct action potential. And then he also has a handful of sycophants and other officials who are loyal to him, but not necessarily very competent in what they do. That really means he has a lot of terrible options to solve his problems. I mean, take a look at his favorite pet, Wilhuff Tarkin. I mean, that guy's a fucking disaster. When he isn't getting his Star Destroyer blown up by a bunch of puny insurgents or his top secret Imperial prototype ship stolen by terrorists, he's usually sniffing around the R&D departments in the Imperial military looking for new ideas that he can steal and claim to be his own. I mean, if Wilhuff Tarkin is your idea of a good chief operations guy, then your empire is completely screwed. When this guy isn't fantasizing about having shirtless knife fights with his men, he's busy destroying trillion-dollar Imperial bases to cover his own nefarious bullshit, or blowing up the only planet that literally everyone in the galaxy has no problem with. And so when you're Palpatine and you've surrounded yourself with sycophants and goons whose only redeeming qualities are that they won't stab you in your back, when you need something taken care of, you go third party. Now, thanks to a complete lack of control the Republic has had over its territory, and the continued lack of control the Empire had, the Outer Rim has always been a breeding ground for some of the most violent and dangerous scum in the galaxy. It's basically like the endgame content for the Star Wars galaxy, where you can get all the legendary loot and do all the, dungeon raids. And this is also where the money bounty hunter tradition is the strongest. But the patchwork network of lawmen and planetary militias have very little resources and can't rely on the core when they face a serious problem. Instead, they rely on these bounty hunters to keep peace. And the only thing that's holding them together as a profession is oftentimes the misinterpreted bounty hunter code. And these bounty hunters at the top of their game are truly a sight to see. Whether it's Cad Bane or young Boba Fett, both individuals have tangled with Jedi and lived to tell the tale. You have specialists like Marksman, Fennec Shand, or Muscle, like the Black Chrysanthemum. Or if you just need a tank, then Djarin will do. So will any other Beskar-equipped Mandalorian. And so when the Empire hires one of these individuals, they're not just reaching out to a bounty hunter because they might know the local area better, or they might blend in with their surroundings better. It's not even because the Empire might want to deny that they were a part of this operation, although sometimes that is the case. But in most cases, the Empire approached these bounty hunters because they were, in fact, the best people for the jobs. The best trackers, the best hunters, the best killers. These bounty hunters possess something that the Empire did not. Which reminds us that the Empire was never as scary and as competent as they like to market themselves as.